and welcome to another episode of Business Breakthroughs. I'm Neil DiPentino. I'm the president of Titan MediaWorks and your host for today's show, where we will break through the BS to get the real-world advice and direction from those who are and have been down deep in the trenches. I'd like to introduce you to our guest today. He is a fascinating guest who spent over 2 decades helping entrepreneurs shift their mindset and find true freedom through his proprietary ARC method. He's a seasoned mindset consultant who believes the simple shift in thinking can transform both business and life. Joining us today for part 2 of our interview is from Mindset Malta is our friend Ken Attard. Ken, thanks for being with us once again.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me back.
Absolutely.
Let's finish off what we started.
Well, you are the first person we've ever invited back to this show. I think you're probably the first person that ever really wanted to come back to this show. But that's a whole different story, right?
Or one of the few people that really likes to go on.
well, and there's that too. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? It was interesting when you were on for the first part of the show. We were talking about the pillars of your ARC method. Right.
Yeah.
And so you were going like really well. Everything was good. We got kind of to number 3, and I knew number 4 and number 5 were coming because there's 5 pillars to this. And I wanted to make sure that our audience had the benefit of your expertise. And I didn't think I got a feeling we're going to rush through it, and I didn't want to do that. So I am so happy that you absolutely made a decision to come back. So great. Hey, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And talk a little bit about your program. When you were with me last time in the last episode, we were talking about the ARC method that you had developed as a foundation for one's mindset. And there's 5 pillars. Before we get into 4 and 5, though, can you maybe briefly recap number 1 through 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So ARC method, ARC being a very strong structure in architecture foundation. And this is the idea behind the ARC method, that it is a very strong foundation for mindset, without a doubt. And we started off with pillar 1. Pillar 1 was all about awareness. And awareness is associated with learning and unlearning, because believe it or not, there are some truths that potentially are from many people's perception are truths, and in actual fact, they may not be the truth. So this is what pillar 1 was all about, because everything does start with awareness. So that's learning and unlearning potentially some stuff that maybe up until now has been true to you, yet there's a whole different paradigm, a whole different perception of that truth. We then moved on to pillar number 2, which was all about adapting. And that adapting is all about change. And the key factor here is about embracing change rather than resisting it. There are many entrepreneurs out there who will resist change. And the fact of the matter is that change is always happening. It is essentially the only constant that will exist. And from time to time in your business, you're going to want to change some systems, want to change methods, ways of doing business. And that's going to happen. And embracing that is going to make your life much, much easier. We then moved on to pillar number 3, which was all about alignment. And alignment is about tapping into something that is much bigger than you. As we said previously, call it whatever you'd like to call it. Call it source, call it God, call it the quantum field, or as I like to call it, the umami self, which is the essence of deliciousness of who you truly are, because alignment is all about that alignment with something much bigger than yourself. Many individuals, I'd say the majority of entrepreneurs and individuals have been, let's say, duped or fooled to believe that the physical aspect of their life is actually more important than the non-physical part of their life, or let's call it the emotional part of their life. When in actual fact, everything begins with the emotional part first, and that feeling. And when you learn to really understand that, you start to give it much, much more due diligence. You give it more. You had to actually be dedicated to it much, much more, because you know it's going to have an effect on every single result in your life. So that, in a nutshell, were the first 3 pillars. I don't know if you wanted to add something else there, Neil?
No, actually, so this is really, so I'm looking at this a little bit differently than some of the podcasts that we've done in the past. This is almost kind of like a podcast webinar in my mind. So, and I'm learning so much from the first part of the interview. So I don't want to interrupt you too much, but so I would love if you would just get into part 4 and let's find out the rest of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So part 4 or pillar 4 moves on to applying. Now, this is very much related with alignment as well, in the sense of alignment is all about inspiration. It's all about learning how to receive inspiration. Because as you quiet your mind and you're tapping into something much bigger than you actually begin to receive inspiration, ideas, thoughts, all of these wonderful things. So how is this attached to applying? Well, applying is, at first you might say, applying is about action. Now, I've come to discover, and I can guarantee you once you start to tap into alignment, that you will also discover that it is not about action. Although you have been taught, this is one of those truths that many an entrepreneur has been taught, is that you always need to be taking action, that you always need to be going full speed ahead, that not only do you need to be taking action, you actually need to be taking massive action. And this is to the detriment of many an entrepreneur, because the minute an entrepreneur, if that is a solid belief that one has, that to be successful, you have to be taking action all the time, the minute one begins to quiet down or slow down for whatever reasons that may be, a sense of guilt starts to kick in. Because the truth that you believe that you have to be taking this action, taking this massive action, now is making you feel horrible that you decided to slow down, take a couple of days off, slow your mind self, get yourself reset, potentially go into nature and reset yourself, rejuvenate yourself. So this is key, because what I've discovered is it's not about action. Yeah, action is important, yet there's a significant difference between action and inspired action. So when you are aligning, when you are in alignment and you're receiving those ideas and you're receiving those inspirations, those solutions, now you take action on those inspirations. So let me give you a really simple example, because you might be thinking, okay, what, is this a really big thing or whatever? But it doesn't have to be, in the sense of nowadays, for myself, for instance, sometimes someone's name pops into my head. Now, how does this magically pop into my head? It's not because, I was potentially thinking about them or whatever. I just happened to be at the same frequency of whatever thought there was in all around us that was aligned with that name, and that name popped into my head. So more often than not, when that happens to me now, I contact that person. I say, oh man, you know what? Neil's name popped into my head today. Let me just give him a shout out, say, hey, how you doing? And amazingly, more often than not, that person will say, wow, like that's incredible. I was just talking about you yesterday, or you know what? I really need to talk to you. This is fantastic. You contacted me at the right time because I'm going through this challenge right now. And, it's just perfect. Well, that's inspiration. That's what inspiration is. So now in even when it comes to your sales, all of a sudden now you're calling 10 people and closing 5 sales rather than having to call 100 people and close 5 sales, because you're working with inspiration. And the cool thing about that is that you become so much more efficient, and you becoming so much more efficient is actually going to free up more time for yourself. So it is absolutely significant. This isn't about there's a lot of people out there, and I say this with the utmost respect because everybody, is on their own path. There's a lot of people out there busy doing nothing. Like, some people, you contact them, and whenever you contact them, they're busy. Like I live on an island that's 120 square miles. Like I can be having a cappuccino with a friend or someone within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, no problem for the most part. So sometimes I do randomly contact a friend, hey, let's get together, right? And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm really busy, let's get together in 3 weeks time. Like you can't find 15 minutes, half an hour between now and 3 weeks. Like how busy is your life? Like I get it. And there are times when yet a lot of times, and again, this just comes back to beliefs. How many, and the belief that you have to be taking this action. Many have a belief that if they're busy, then that's a good thing. That's leading
they're accomplishing something.
They're accomplishing something, right? And
I found myself doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. I talk with people and you pick up the phone. The first thing I say, well, I've been really busy. It's like, well, the whole world's busy to some extent, right? But a good example is like, you want to get an answer for somebody, and all they got to do is just text yes, no, whatever, but they never do. You're like, well, why didn't you do that? Well, I was busy. Well, like you're on this all the time anyway, right? You couldn't say yes, no, or whatever. Take 2 minutes. You're not that busy. And I like that. And I also like what you were saying about, the inspired action. I have a situation with a person that used to work for me when I first was hired to be vice president of sales for this company. I interviewed everybody in the company, and I interviewed this one particular person, and I asked her what she was doing, and she said, well, I'm making phone calls every day to try to get new clients. That's great. So how many people do you call in a day? Well, I usually call about 100 people in a day. I'm making up that number. It's probably more like 70, right? And I said, so you're calling this many people a day. So what kind of conversations are you having with these people if you're calling that many people? Obviously, there's only so many hours in a day. You can't be having productive conversations with somebody if you're like in a hurry to get to the next one. So we kind of changed her whole approach to, I guess, I didn't call it that at the time, but inspired action, as you said. And the results were phenomenal. She became our best salesperson. At the time, she was too young to go out in the field. We wanted to put her in the field. She had just graduated college. She told us that we couldn't even get her to rent a car, right? Because she was too young. But she told us that I found out, and this is back in several years ago. She said, I found out in Canada that I can actually rent a car. I don't have to be 25. So we made her our Canadian rep, and she rocked it. She rocked it because she went there with purpose. She was inspired by what she was doing. She loved what she was doing, and she became our best employee.
Yeah, and she was actually building relationships.
Right, exactly.
Right? Whereas spending time on the phone, they're just, how many times I've had someone call me and I've had to actually say to them, could you just slow down a tiny bit? I'm not understanding a word you're saying.
Yeah.
So
people tell me that all the time.
Important. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Let's
no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. So absolutely, I agree with you 100%. So this inspired action is absolutely vital. Like I said, it's just going to save you a ton of time, and you have other things that you in your life that you want to dedicate a little more time to, like relationships, like your health, like like personal hobbies or whatever it is you love doing. So very, very, very important. And then pillar number 5 is allowing. And allowing is all about trust and learning to trust yourself. Again, trust the divine. And that's why the alignment is so important, because you come to a place where you finally realize that everything is always working out for you. It's always working out for you. Even when it appears not to be, you just don't have the whole picture. You just don't have the whole picture because you're not omnipotent. You're not omnipresent. You don't have the whole picture to be able to identify that even though it appears not to be working out for you, at some level, there is a reason why that is happening, and it actually is always working out for you. So you can trust the divine. You can trust that everything is working out for you. You can trust that everything is working out in perfect timing always, even when it appears not to be. Now, why is that so significant? Well, simply put, if that's the case and you truly are at that place that you trust, there's really nothing to worry about. There's nothing to be concerned about. And if there's nothing to be concerned about, then I'm going to continue to accentuate that good feeling. And as I continue to accentuate that good feeling, I believe we mentioned this as well, a good feeling mindset, this is what I'm transmitting to the universe. And as I'm transmitting this to the universe has to reply in exactly the same frequency. So I'm transmitting that good feeling, even though I potentially am going through some challenging moments, which is really what I consider real success, is being able to go through those moments totally joyfully. So that's what allowing is. I think that puts together all 5 pillars. I mean, obviously, there's more depths to go into. Yet, sure. As a foundation, when all of these things are coming together, because they intertwine together, and this is why I interweave them in any type of program or anytime I'm working with anybody, because they work together synergistically. It's not a matter of learning about awareness and then all of a sudden that's it. No, you're continuing to learn. You're continuing to unlearn. It intertwines with change. It intertwines with alignment. They work together synergistically.
I love that. And so using these 5 pillars as a business person, I mean, what is the end goal for the business person? What could they expect by utilizing this methodology?
Yeah, the end goal for me, although let me put this in, there's never an end. There's never an end, because there's always more. But I like to call it true freedom. Okay. And with true freedom, there are a number of concepts that are associated with true freedom. One of them is your worthiness. And I think this is absolutely important. Your worthiness. Whatever is happening in your life is never, ever compromised. And when you truly begin to understand that, now you're going to really start to begin to have true freedom, because now you know that your worthiness isn't compromised. It doesn't matter if your business is doing well, if it's not doing so well. And also, you don't care what other people are thinking or what you think they're thinking or what they're saying about you. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. So this, for me, is where I want to lead an entrepreneur, any individual, is to understand that you can have that true freedom. Because now when you're thinking this way, can anything really bother you? Really not. And that's the freedom, because so many entrepreneurs are stuck in their head worrying about this, and how am I going to do this, and how am I going to do this? And that's not freedom. That's actually imprisoning yourself.
It is absolutely the opposite.
So that's where I wanted. That's where I would want to take. That's where I would definitely, the end goal, and applying these will definitely take an entrepreneur to that level.
Outstanding. Well, man, that was just a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information. I got to tell you, I really enjoyed part 1 and part 2 of this. We're coming to a close with our time together. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
I'm not even sure what was my final thought before part 1. It's just to remember to laugh more. Yeah. Like, just really to remember to laugh so much more. And, especially when you can laugh at yourself and enjoy it. Enjoy it and enjoy the journey. And that's what it's all about, because the journeys are made up of moments. The moments make up the minutes make up the hours make up the days make up the months, years. So ultimately, living moment by moment, you're in joy. Ultimately, you're going to live a joyful life, and a joyful life is going to give you the outcomes that you want.
I love it. That's awesome. So, Ken, if our audience wants to get in contact with you to find out more about Mindset Malta and the ARC method, how do they go about doing that?
Absolutely. They can they can follow me on Instagram, Mindset Malta. They can look that up. They can find me on LinkedIn, Ken Attard. They can find me on Facebook under Mindset Malta as well. If they want to send me an email, by all means, ken@mindsetmalta.com.
Outstanding. Ken, thank you so much for being on the show once again. And thank you for the wonderful insight that you provided our audience with today.
My absolute pleasure. And thanks for having me.
You betcha. Hey, folks, that's all we have for you today. So thrilled you could be with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Business Breakthroughs is sponsored by Titan Media Works, providing podcast production and guest booking services for those who want to be in the podcasting space. Check us out at titanmediaworks.com. Works is spelled WORX. And also check out all the other great hosts on the Small Business Delivered Network at smallbusinessdelivered.com. So until next time, be sure to stay tuned for more business breakthroughs and stay positive. Keep breaking through. Have a great day. Bye-bye.